This all happened back in 2002, when I was a 19-year-old directionless nobody still living with my mom. She bought a house out in the sticks of Iowa, where we ended up moving. She was tired of having lived in the same town for so many years and wanted to get away from memories of my late father. The place was 2 stories, with a basement and a 3-car garage. Not a bad place for being in the boonies. The day after we moved in, I was beginning to set up my room on the 2nd floor when I discovered a crawlspace that led to the attic. Being the curious youth I was, I decided to investigate. The doorway was small, about 2.5 by 4 feet, so I actually had to crawl in. The room was illuminated by a single window, and ran the full length of the house from north to south. The east wall was floor to ceiling, covered in a dry erase board loaded with drawings clearly made by children in permanent marker. I couldn't figure out how old the drawings were, but this place must have been a playroom at some point. My best guess would be that the drawings were from 2, maybe 3 kids. It was just normal things: cars, family, rocket ships, each other, mom, dad, that kind of stuff. But there was this one strange figure that was always drawn completely black. Short legs, long arms, long hair, and no face. Just a black circle. Going from the northern tip of the wall to the southern edge, the figure became more common, larger and more prominent. Closer to the family, but always just behind them. Its features never changed, though. I got chills and decided I was done in that room, and aside from that wall, the room was 100% bare, save for a layer of dust. I left and closed the door behind me, sliding my dresser in front of it afterwards. No need to return to that room anytime soon. I went downstairs to play video games and try to put that weird figure out of my mind. Then, later, in the middle of the night, I heard a weird sound from upstairs. It sounded like something bouncing and rolling from north to south on the 2nd floor on hardwood. The only hardwood floor was in the attic, though. It persisted for nearly 3 hours. North to south, then south to north, rinse and repeat. Then it stopped. I went back to sleep on the couch and convinced myself it was just the wood settling with the new weight on it, because I was a skeptical retard. Then on the 3rd night I heard it again, but with a new sound accompanying it. I was sure my ears were lying to me. Fucking footsteps. Tiny little bare feet padding away at the floor after the ball, which sounded like one of those ultra bouncy rubber super balls. I tried my best to put it out of my mind and fall back to sleep. The next morning, I returned to the crawlspace to investigate. There were footprints in the dust layer, not even half my size 13 boots that I had been wearing when I was in there yesterday. There was only one set of footprints, and they seemed to be in a perfect loop from north to south, with little dots and lines in the dust where the ball would have rolled. I felt a heavy sense of dread overcome me, and I immediately left the room and returned the dresser to its place in front of the door, before going to play more video games and try to put it out of my mind for a 3rd time. Soon after, I heard the bouncing begin again. I could hear feet again, except there were 2 pairs this time. The 2nd set of footsteps sounded much heavier, like a full-grown adult male, and they were fast, chasing after the smaller feet. Same pattern, north, south, repeat. The super ball noise was firmer now, like it was being thrown, and not just bounced. I put in my earbuds and turned on some Metallica to ignore the sounds. There was no way in hell I was going back up there to investigate. I told my mom about the sounds when she got back from work. Naturally, she was skeptical of it as well. Oddly enough, though, nothing happened that night. No sounds or anything. At least, until the crack of dawn. Then I began to hear a 3rd set of feet, later than the 2nd, accompanying the 1st. Once again, I tried to ignore it. I had to be hearing things, right? The sound stopped and I resumed playing video games in the living room. Suddenly, I heard something come down the stairs, bouncing. My cat decided this was an excellent time to suddenly go completely insane. He puffed up to the size of a basketball and began growling and hissing at the stairs. Then a fucking super ball comes bouncing down the stairs, and I hear tiny footsteps run away from the top of the stairwell. At the time, it was in July and something like 95 degrees out, if I remember correctly, and the AC unit was off because it was conveniently broken. But I felt a massive cold draft cascade down the stairs and envelop me. My cat ran off to the porch, yowling and hissing like he was cornered by predators or some shit. I bent down and picked up the super ball. It looked old as fuck and had a chunk of it missing. I hastily took it outside and threw it in the dumpster. There were no more sounds that night. The garbage picked up the next morning, and there was silence for a week. Then one night, they started again. All 3 sets of feet featuring Super Ball. I'm officially freaked out at this point, but more so angry. My mom heard it too this time. We go upstairs, shove the dresser, and tear open the crawl space. There were fucking footprints everywhere. There were 3 distinct sets of little kid footprints, and one set that looked like Shaq had been in the attic, barefoot and 4-toed. That set of footprints was much larger than my boot size. I'd had enough of that crawl space at that point, and spent nearly half an hour caulking the shit out of the door so that bitch would stay closed. As I started down the stairs, I heard footsteps running behind me in the hall. I turned around and the fucking Super Ball is at the top of the stairs. With visible terror on my face, I slowly backed down the stairway. I took comfort in a nearby chair, and after 30 or so seconds of sitting down, the sounds began again, but quieter. Only the lighter feet in the ball. I decided to check something and turned on the upstairs light that illuminated the top of the stairs. The ball was fucking gone. I'd had enough, and so I went to stay with my aunt for a week. According to my mom, the sounds stopped after I left. I come back, and they start within 5 minutes of me getting home and unpacking my stuff. I hear a loud thud from the Crawlspace door. There was no way in hell I was going to open that door again. Then I could hear a ball bouncing off the wall on the other side at about face height, repeatedly. In a ballsy moment, I say, "Hey, play quieter, please?" The sound stopped, and nothing for another 3 days. The morning of the last day, the sound started again. Just the ball this time. No feet. Then silence. Suddenly, I hear the bouncing again, but it's coming down the stairs and hitting the walls on the way down. I could see the stairs, and nothing physical accompanied the sounds. There was no ball. It happened repeatedly for probably an hour. This next part I remember with the utmost clarity. I was playing a Warcraft 3 singles weekend tournament, and just when the game starts, I hear a massive crash from upstairs. Sounds like shit's flying everywhere. Then the bouncing again. The power in the whole house browns out for a few seconds. So much for the tournament. I slowly headed for the stairs, silently shitting myself on the way. The ball was at the bottom of the stairs to greet me like, "Hello, mortal plaything." I reluctantly picked it up and went upstairs. My dresser was in fucking pieces, and the door to the crawl space was knocked off its hinges, lying on the ground at the other side of the room. And the room was easily 15 feet across, and there were pieces of my dresser and clothing against the far wall. I sprinted down the stairs and out the back door, hurling the ball as far into the field behind my house as I could manage. I turned around and started back. The window to the crawl space was in plain view of where I was walking, and completely black. I couldn't make out the finer details because I'm nearsighted and hadn't had my glasses on at the time, but it looked like a three-dimensional shadow blocking out the window. I watched as it slowly moved away from it and felt intense fear. I found my nuts and went back inside, returning to my room to pack my shit and leave. I'd had fucking enough. I started cleaning up my dresser and I was in range of the crawl space, which made me feel like there were 1,000 rocks in my stomach weighing me down. The ball rolled out of the crawl space like it shouldn't be 60 yards deep in the field I just threw it into. I began to hear faint, ominous breathing coming from the darkness beyond the door. I grabbed my shit and flew out of the house like the fucker was burning down. I forced my mom to leave with me, not forgetting to grab my cat, and we drive non-stop until we're at my aunt's. We go back the next day to finish packing shit up and leave that place for good. But as we turn the corner, we see several fire trucks outside the house. Apparently there was a fire in the upstairs that destroyed the crawl space in my room. The investigator blamed it on faulty wiring. I got my shit and got the hell out of Dodge, never again returning to that house. I recently checked on its status, and it turns out the next guy that bought the land tore down the house after only 2 months. Whatever had been there was gone now, but even still, I would scare myself to the point of hearing the ball bouncing around me some nights.